What's going on, guys? How you doing? Welcome to Light the Lamp. Today, I'm going to be listening to what I believe to be the worst contract for every team in the NHL. A GM's ability to sign players to team-friendly contracts can be crucial when trying to build a cup contending team, but every GM in the league has signed a bad contract at some point. Don't forget that this list is a subjective list, and I'd love to hear your opinion on my picks in the comments below. Without further ado, here is the worst contracts in the NHL. The first team I'm going to talk about today is the Anaheim Ducks. This is a guy you're going to see in pretty much every single worst NHL contract video on YouTube. David Backes' contract comes with a $6 million cap hit, and this runs through the 2021 season. Backes signed this contract in the summer of 2016, but he actually signed it with the Bruins and not the Ducks. The Ducks actually got this contract earlier this year when they sent Andros Cash the other way in exchange for Backes, and I think it was like a prospect and a pick or something like that. But either way, it's safe to say that Backes' best years are definitely behind him, and they were probably left in St. Louis and not even in Boston. In 3 years with Boston, he had played 201 games and only scored 91 points, and this simply isn't enough production for a $6 million player. Up next is a contract for the Coyotes that I don't think is nearly as bad as like the Backes contract, but I still think it's a bit of an overpayment. He signed this contract back in 2018, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract comes with an $8.25 million cap hit. This runs through the 26-27 season. Now, again, I don't think he's like a bad defender or declining or getting old or anything. He's only 28. The thing is that at the time of this recording, this is the fourth most expensive defender in the entire league. And honestly, I wouldn't even have him in the top 10 best defenders in the league. I'd probably put him in the top 20, but I definitely wouldn't put him in the top 5. Now, before you Boston Raider fans come at me, I really want you to hear me out because if anything, this is a compliment. David Krejci's $7.25 million cap hit runs through 2021. And the thing is that the Boston Bruins don't really sign terrible contracts. When doing this video, I had to compare a person's contract with his teammates' contracts. And when Bergeron, Pasta, and Marchand are all making less than $7 million, and they definitely produce more than Krejci, this would have to be the worst contract on the entire team. This was one of the easier decisions I made for this entire video, and for the Buffalo Sabres, it's Kyle Okposo. His cap hit is $6 million, and this goes to the 2022-2023 season. The reason he got this such a big payday is because in his last 3 seasons with the Islanders, he had 69 points, 51, and 64. In the summer of 2016, he signs his contract with the Buffalo Sabres, and they really haven't gotten their money's worth ever since. In 2016-17, he had 45 points, and then he had 44, and then 29, and in this past season, he's only had 19 points in 52 games. This is one that most people were probably expecting when the Flames came up, and it's Milan Lucic. At a $6 million cap hit, his contract runs to the 22-23 season. The days where Lucic hits 50 and 60-point seasons are definitely over. Since the 17-18 season, he's had 34 points, 20 points, and in this most recent season that's now paused, he has 20 points in 68 games. Besides the dollar amount, the worst part about this contract is that it doesn't end until the 22-23 season, and he has no movement clause, so the Flames are definitely stuck with his contract for 3 more years. Coming up in this next spot, I almost put James Reimer for the Hurricanes, but I decided on Captain Jordan Staal. This isn't really a hard knock against him, because he's a really good player, obviously. I just don't think the Hurricanes are getting what they paid for. They signed a massive 10-year contract after the 2012 season to get Jordan Staal. He was coming off a season with the Penguins in which he scored 25 goals and 50 points, and ever since then he hasn't passed that goal total or that point total. And the thing is that he'll also be 34 when this contract ends, because he's 31 right now, so it probably won't get much better. Up next is the Chicago Blackhawks, and honestly this is probably one of the worst contracts in the entire league. Brent Seabrook's cap hit is $6.875 million, and this runs to the 23-24 season. Seabrook is 35 years old, which means by the time this contract is up, he'll be 39. And it didn't even take very long for this contract to look terrible. After signing it in 2015, it started to look really bad really quick. His point total started falling, his defensive play fell, and his speed just wasn't where it used to be. This is a case where a player got rewarded for what he's done in the past and not what the GM thinks he's going to do in the future. The thing is that even though he has this terrible contract, you can never knock him for his 3 Stanley Cups, which he was a massive part of. Much like when I was looking at the Bruins on Cap Friendly, the Avalanche gave me the same problem of I just didn't know who, so I had to pick the worst of the best. But they don't really sign bad contracts, and for me it's Erik Johnson at $6 million through 22-23. The thing with me is that I don't think this is a terrible contract. I think he's worth about $5 to $6 million anyway, It's just that when you compare it to his other teammates' contracts, like McKinnon, who's only getting 6.3 million for another 4 years, when he's one of the best players in the entire league, that's what Erik Johnson's contract is going up against. And also, when you get on Cap Friendly and look at the Avalanche's page, so many of their players' contracts are up in 1 or 2 years, and they have some big names to sign, like Cale Makar and Gabriel Landeskog, that this $6 million just might get in the way just a little bit. But again, I don't think it's a terrible contract. Coming up next is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And this team really doesn't have any bad contracts, just like the Avalanche and the Bruins. But I had to pick Brandon Dubinsky. Coming in at a $5.85 million cap hit, his contract ends at the 2021 season. He received this contract in the 2014 season after he scored 50 points. But the thing is that he hasn't scored that many since. To make it worse is that he probably won't be getting any better because once his contract's up, he'll be 35 years old. My Stars pick for worst contract probably won't make their fans happy, and it's Jamie Benn. Coming in with a $9.5 million cap hit, his contract runs to the 24-25 season. He signs this contract after his 2015-2016 season in which he had 89 points, and he went on to score 69 points, 79 points, and then 2018-19 he only had 53, and in this pause season of 2019-20 he's only had 39 points. And while Stars fans might not think he's overpaid, I just want to list a few names that make about what he makes. He's making barely less than Alexander Ovechkin. He has the same amount of money made as Malkin, Kucherov, and he's making more than Crosby, Draisaitl, and McKinnon. And honestly, I would not put Jamie Benn in the same tier as any of those players. Up next, we have the Red Wings. And this contract really didn't start looking terrible until this year. For Justin Abdelkader, he has a $4.25 million cap hit, and this runs to the 22-23 season. After he signed it, he wasn't terrible. He was never going to be a 50 or 60 point guy. Ever since he signed this contract, he's had a 42-point season, a 21-point season, a 35, a 19. But this year is when it started really looking bad. In the 19-20 season, it's 49 games, he has 3 points. And he's not going anywhere because he has a no trade clause, and by the time this contract's up, he'll be 37 years old, so it's not like his production's going to go up very much. Up next is the Oilers, and it's not going to surprise anyone that's contract's on this list. In the summer of 2018, while he was with the Flames, James Neal signed a contract worth $5.75 million that goes to the 22-23 season. But last offseason, the Flames and the Oilers had a trade, and this trade sent Milan Lucic to the Flames and James Neal to the Oilers. Neal hasn't found the success he had in previous years in either city. In Calgary, he had 19 points in 63 games. And playing with McDavid and Draisaitl hasn't helped very much either, because he has 31 points in 55 games this season. Up next is the Florida Panthers, and this one kind of pains me to put on this list because he's one of my favorite goalies in the entire league. Sergei Bobrovsky is making $10 million a year, and this lasts to the 25-26 season. The reason this contract is so bad is because right now his averages aren't even close to his career numbers. In his career, he averages a 921 save percent, and his goals against average is 2.41. Right now, he's having the worst season of his NHL career. He's hitting at an even 900 save percent, and his goals against average is 3.23, almost a full goal higher than his career average. Now you can definitely put this on the fact that his defense in front of him isn't that great, and it's also Quenneville's first year, so they're still kind of meshing together. But either way, if things don't get better, he still has 6 long years after this season of this contract. I already know the Kings fans are going to start typing their comments right when they see who pops up, but it's Drew Doughty at $11 million a year through the 26-27 season. I honestly didn't think his contract was that bad until this season. Much like Seabrook, I feel like this is a contract to pay him for what he's done and not for what they think he's going to do in the future. And you got to remember, he'll be 37 when this contract is up. Even though he's only 30, honestly, from this 2019-2020 season, I've seen a steep decline. He seems like he's much sloppier with the puck. And right now, he's ranked third in giveaways for defenders, and the two guys above him aren't getting paid nearly as much as he is. Doughty's the second highest paid defender in the league, and even though I still consider him a really good defender, he's simply not what he used to be and definitely not worth $11 million a year. For the Minnesota Wild, I simply couldn't choose between the two top terrible contracts, so I put them both. And it makes it easier because they both have a $7.5 million cap hit, and they're both ending in 24-25. Now, the thing about Ryan Suter is that I don't think it's a terrible contract right now, but how's it going to look in 3 years when he's nearly 40? and he still has 2 years left on his contract. But when it comes to Zach Parise, I really don't think he was ever worth 7.5 million, and he surely won't be worth that much in 4 or 5 years when he's nearly 40 years old and he's still on this contract. My pick for the Montreal Canadiens is Captain Shea Weber. Coming with a $7.85 million cap hit, his contract lasts to the 25-26 season. Honestly, I think he's worth the money he's paid, but the thing that makes this a bad contract in my opinion is the length. He still has 6 more full seasons after this upcoming playoffs. And the thing is that he's become pretty injury prone recently. In the 17-18 season, he only played 26 games. In the 18-19 season, he played 58. And in the 19-20 season, even though he played 65 games, right before this pause happened that we're all going through, he was injured and he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. So again, right now, it's just the injuries, but in a few years, who knows if he'll be playing the same way or if he can stay healthy. David Poile has signed some really good contracts in the last few years for the Predators, but this one is very obviously bad. Turris' contract has a $6 million cap hit and it runs to the 23-24 season. The thing about this guy is that he just can't stay healthy, and when he does, he's not very productive. Not counting his rookie year where he played 3 games, and not counting this year that has been cut short, he's played 10 full seasons in the NHL, and only 4 times has he made it to 70 games or more. In his time in Nashville, he's had 42 points, 23 points, and 31 points, and he's still on this contract for 4 more seasons. Up next is the Devils, and this is another player I don't want to put on this list just because I like him so much, but it's PK Subban. Coming in with a $9 million cap hit, this contract runs to the 21-22 season. Honestly, I never saw a good fit with the Devils, and it's kind of showed in his stats. This season that's been cut short, he has 18 points in 68 games, and even in his last year in Nashville, he only had 31 points in 63 games. And this is okay for an average defenseman, but he's a type of player that can get 60 or 50 points every season, but he just hasn't shown it lately. And ever since he's joined the Devils, his head's not in the same place it used to be when he was on cup contending teams like Montreal or Nashville. Lately, he's been hosting a trivia show with his girlfriend Lindsey Vaughn and also blogging his daily life with her. And that's just not the mindset someone should be in. And I know his team's not going to be in this playoff, so he has more free time. But even before this pause happened, and they thought there was a chance they could maybe make playoffs, he was still doing all this. All that being said, I still think he has the ability to be elite, and hopefully we'll see that sometime soon. Up next is a contract that I think rivals Brent Seabrook's for one of the worst in the league, and that's Andrew Ladd. Coming in with a $5.5 million cap hit, his contract runs to the 22-23 season. In his last 3 seasons, starting in 17-18, he had 29 points, and then 18-19 he only had 11 in 26 games, and then 19-20 he's played 4 games with the Islanders, as he spent most of the season with the Bridgeton Sound Tigers, which is the Islanders' AHL affiliate. The contract also has a no trade clause, and even if it didn't, there's absolutely no way the Islanders would be able to trade this guy. Up next is the Rangers, and I'll probably catch some heat on this one, but it's okay. Henrik Lundqvist cap hit is $8.5 million, and this runs through the 2021 season. Now, this isn't me saying that he's a bad goalie. I still think he could be a really good goalie, say if he was on like the Hurricanes that don't really have a great starter. But the thing is that the Rangers have 2 absolute studs in Shesterkin and Georgiev right now. He played a lot at the beginning of the season, but near the end of the season, there was games where he wasn't even on the bench for them. Having a goalie making $8.5 million when he's not even starting any games is a bad contract. Many of the contracts on this list are contracts that were okay and then turned bad, but I think this one was just terrible from the start. Bobby Ryan's contract is a $7.5 million cap hit, and this runs to the 21-22 season. When he signed this contract, he was only coming off of a 48-point season, which is good for most people, but it's not with $7.5 million. His next 2 seasons after that, he did have 54 and 56 points, which is okay for that amount of money. But then he had a 25-point season, a 33-point season, a 42-point season, and in this most recent season, he had 8 points in 24 games. Now, I don't think it'd be fair to mention Bobby Ryan and not mention his addiction issues, which I think is amazing that he got through. And to go through addiction issues with alcohol and come back and play in the NHL is an amazing feat in itself. So I truly do hope that in the future he becomes the player that's worth $7.5 million. Up next is another contract that I thought was a bit of an overpayment when it was signed, and that's Kevin Hayes. His contract is a $7.14 million cap hit, and this runs to the 25-26 season. Now, right when he signed it, I did not think he was worth $7 million. I think he's about a $5.5 to $6 million player. Before he signed this contract, he had a career-high 55 points in 71 games, and those games were split between the Rangers and the Jets. And then this season, he only has 41 points in 69 games, and I simply don't think that's enough to warrant a $7.14 million contract. All that being said, I don't think he's totally, entirely overpaid, but the Flyers just really don't have that many bad contracts, so this was the worst that I could see. Up next is a contract that GM Jim Rutherford will probably regret until the day he dies, and that's Jack Johnson. Coming in at a $3.25 million cap hit, this horrible contract runs to the 22-23 season. He was never worth $3.25 million, and this last season, he has played terribly, and this contract has looked worse and worse almost every single game. And he played so bad in the 18-19 season that Rutherford even said there's a 75 to 80% chance that he gets traded in the offseason, which he never did. And that's probably because no one wanted to have a $3.25 million defender who's probably best on a third pairing and maybe even best the seventh defenseman. This was kind of a hard decision, and most people would probably put Jake Allen, but since he's top 10 in both save percent and goals against average this year, I have Alex Steen. Steen's contract comes with a $5.75 million cap hit, and this runs to the 2021 season. After signing this contract, he did have a 51-point season, which isn't terrible, but then he went on to have a 46-point season, and in 2018-19, he only had 27 points in 65 games, and in this pause season, he only has 17 in 55. Even though Steen is now on the fourth line, he's still been an incredibly important piece for the Blues. That being said, Steen is a huge reason why Coach Berube started the fourth line almost every single game during their cup run. Up next is the San Jose Sharks, and this is kind of an obvious one. It's Erik Karlsson. He's getting paid $11.5 million a year, and this runs to the 26-27 season. Now, honestly, I believe a healthy Erik Karlsson is worth around $11 million. The thing is that he just can't stay healthy these days. In his first season with the Sharks, he only played 53 games, but he did have 45 points. And in this season that's been paused, he has 40 points in 56 games. And like I said before, a healthy Erik Karlsson is worth this much money. But the thing that gets me on this contract is the length. After this season, there's still 7 seasons where the Sharks will be paying him $11.5 million. And if he can't manage to play more than 60 games a year for the next 7 seasons, this contract will not be worth it at all, and it will probably make my list every single year. Up next is the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they really don't sign a lot of bad contracts. And honestly, Ryan McDonough's $6.75 million cap hit is worth it. But the thing that gets me is the length. McDonough's contract reminds me a lot of the Ryan Suter deal, which I think right now he's worth the money. It's just the length that gets me. He still has 6 full seasons after this season, and by the time he's 35, 36, 37, the contract might not be looking as good. The Leafs have some massive contracts, with 3 players making over $10 million a year, though William Nylander is not one of them. Coming in with a $6.96 million cap hit, his contract runs to the 23-24 season. The thing about Nylander is that offensively, he's not terrible. He's had 2 61-point seasons, and then in 18-19, he had a 27-point season in 54 games, which isn't the best. And then this season, he had 59 points in 68 games, which is pretty good. The thing about Nylander is his defensive play. It is absolutely terrible, and I think he has a me-first mentality, kind of like his teammate Mitch Marner. But at least Marner can back it up offensively, because his worst season was 61 points, and that's Nylander's best season. This is another one that should come as no surprise, and my Canucks pick is Loui Eriksson. Coming in with a cap hit of $6 million, this runs to the 21-22 season. This was a bad contract from the get-go. He was 31 years old when he signed this contract, but people still thought he could put up the offensive numbers that he found in Dallas and in Boston. He's had multiple 60 and 70-point seasons, but ever since he signed this contract, he's had a 24-point season, 23, 29, and in this season with 49 games played, he only has 13 points. Within the next few years, the Canucks have some very good young studs that are going to want to get paid, and they're going to be very happy to get this contract off the books. Up next is the Capitals, and like some of the other teams I've listed, they don't really have a lot of bad contracts, but I had to pick TJ Oshie. And he has a $5.75 million cap hit, and this runs to the 24-25 season. Ever since his last year in St. Louis, he has consistently hung around the 40 to 50 point mark, and he's still doing that to this day. But the thing that gets me is that there's still 5 more years on this contract, and he's already 33 years old, which is getting up there for a winger. By the time he's around 36, 37, I highly doubt he'll be scoring 40 and 50 points, and there's no way this contract will look good then. Lastly, we have Brian Little of the Winnipeg Jets, and this was kind of obvious when looking at the cap-friendly website for the Jets. He has a $5.29 million cap hit, and this contract runs to the 23-24 season. His contract isn't the worst, I would say, in the league, but ever since signing this contract in 2017, he's only had 43 points, 41 points. But the thing is that in the past, he's been unable to stay healthy, and that came back this season as he's only played 7 games. Seeing that he still has 4 years on this contract and that he's 32 years old, he's bound to regress, and by the time he's 35, 36, this contract's going to look terrible. If you made it this far in the video and watched the whole thing, you have no idea how much that means to me. Thank you so much. Do me the smallest favor in the world and click that subscribe button. It only takes 1 second, but it means so much right now. Every single subscription. I'm going to make so many hockey videos in the future. And I promise you, it'll be so worth clicking that subscribe button because I'm going to bring as much content as I can. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and I'd really love to hear your opinions on the contracts that I picked in the comments down below. For all the information I got in this video, I used capfriendly.com for all the contract information, and for all the stats that I was talking about, I used hockeyreference.com. Again, thank you so much for watching and have a good day.